Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Today we are honored to have Lieutenant General Mike Minihan, Deputy Commander, United States Pacific Command, joining us to discuss the Indo-Paycom Theater. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the speaker and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Air Force, the Department of Defense, the U.S. government, or the Airlift Tanker Association. Please take advantage of the question and answer feature in Teams to submit your questions anytime during the presentation. There is no need to wait until the end of the presentation portion to submit your questions. Also, make sure to like questions by clicking the thumbs up icon. That way we know what you want to hear about. Now I would like to turn it over to the former Vice Commander of Air Mobility Command, Lieutenant General Retired Chris Kelly, to get us started.
Good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be in the world, and thank you for joining us for this seminar. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest presenter today, the Deputy Commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command, headquartered at Camp Howland Mad Smith, Hawaii, Lieutenant General Mike Minihan. For those of you who may not know, General Minihan started his flying career after graduating from ROTC at the University of Auburn with pilot training at Columbus Air Force Base, Mississippi. He then spent the next 9 years in 3 different C-130 squadrons, going from co-pilot to evaluator pilot in those 9 years and 3 different squadrons. Many, I'll tell you, you won't know this. You and I could have overlapped for that same thing. I went from being a co-pilot to an evaluator in my first years after, but I only did it in 1 squadron, which happened to be your very first squadron, the 61st at Little Rock Air Force Base. So go Green Hornets. After completing all those tours, Mike was assigned to the Colonel's Group and was the chief of mobility and bomber assignments. Not an easy task, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that, and I'm sure he got his eyes wide open. That was followed by Squadron Command of the 40th Airlift Squadron at Dias, and then since then, Mike has gone on to have 7 joint assignments, commanded 2 different wings, and unlike the way we did things when I was growing up, I think I can say this safely, Mike got inculcated out in the Pacific Theater. As he became a senior officer, he has now spent over 3 years of his life with his family living on the Korean Peninsula and coming up on over 5.5 years at 2 different headquarters in Hawaii, and so I can't tell you how much expertise that means General Minihan has gotten under his belt with that kind of experience out in the Pacific. So not a better qualified guy or gal that I can think of to help us understand what's going on out in that part of the world. And so with that, it is indeed my honor and privilege to introduce Lieutenant General Mike Minihan.
Okay, sir, that's a hefty intro. I don't deserve it, but I certainly do appreciate it. To you, sir, to the I see General Finley there, to all the other teammates, long-time friends, to the Mobility Enterprise, my warmest and deepest aloha, sir. It's not lost on me. We've got some overlap in Little Rock and also here at Camp Smith as well. But you know, aloha is much more than a greeting. It extends respect, honor, and a graciousness, and that's the way I absolutely feel about being asked to speak to the Enterprise today. So, you know, just a little, you know, I got my 61st colors on today. Actually, you'll see why in a few. I'm rocking the patch. I got the name tag. Forgive the command insignia. Commander insignia. I'm not a commander. I'll decloak to my little Mac patch, which I've been wearing for almost 30 years now. Regardless of the command I've served in, it's always been on my flight suit. So when the Hercs went to ACC, I wore it under the patch. My time in USAFE, my time in PACAF, my time up here in all my joint tours, you need to know that the mobility patch is something I always wear. I also, you can see, am rocking the scarf. So I'm trying to make scarves cool again, but that's an enormous assumption that they were cool in the first place. I don't know. I don't know if that was true, but I do wear them now. Let me just tell you about me, and then I'm going to tell you about you. Then I'm going to tell you about the journey we're going to go on here. The first thing is I'm going to speak, not give a speech. I've got standard Minihan talking points. I've rehearsed it a million times in my head, including my surf session this morning, very early before the sun rose. And there's 1,000 ways this could go, so buckle up, we'll see how it goes. And one thing I can promise you, I'm going to speak from the heart. I am Irish, so when I get close to things that are emotional to me, you'll be able to tell both with the quiver in my voice and perhaps a little watery eye. I don't fight it anymore. It's just the way I am. You'll have to forgive me for that. And then finally, you'll soon realize since I'm an Auburn grad, as was mentioned by General Kelly, I've got about 3 go-to adjectives that I use. You can keep track. You can play adjective bingo with many, and have fun with that. To you all, to the mobility enterprise, of which ATA has been an enormous part of my life way back. I did review General Sharpie, a good friend of mine, Tom Sharpie's presentation a few times ago, and he talked about Captain Sharpie and Major Sharpie and Lieutenant Colonel Sharpie. It's the same way for Minihan. The relationships formed over my career, the extended family afforded by ATA, the wonderful professional events that are hosted has been an enormous impact on my career, and I appreciate it. Hey, this, and ATA is much bigger than just pilots. So I don't care whether you fly, fix, or support. When you talk about the ops group, the maintenance group, the support group, and then to me, the med group fits in all 3 of those categories. So fly, fix, support. I don't care if you're a lifter, a refueler, a mobility support, or aeromedical evacuation. There is room for everybody in this conversation, room for everybody in the words I'm about to say, and certainly when I get to the end here, you'll see how I try to pull it together. And then that extends even one level further to all ranks, officer, enlisted, no matter where you are in the organization. I think that what I'm going to lay out here with the Pacific will hopefully resonate with you all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell 3 personal stories when it comes to the mobility mission here in the Pacific. General Kelly was right. I'm on my 2nd lap around the AOR. 2 tours, 3 jobs in Korea. Deputy ops for PACAF. I'm on my 2nd tour in PACOM and 3rd job in PACOM. So there's certainly some experiences that I could pull from, but I pulled out 3 that I thought highlight kind of exactly what General Van Ovos gets into in her priorities and the way she views mobility. Projecting decisive strength and delivering hope are what I'm going to focus on. I'll touch briefly on Chief Brown's Accelerate, Change, or Lose. I think it's a wonderful document. That'll be my context for how we move forward together. And then I'll pull back to, kind of my private journey, rising up through the ranks, exactly what General Kelly laid out. Starting with the Hornets, my tour at Moody in the 52nd, and then my time in the 37th at Ramstein. I'll leave you some nuggets and then loop back around. So that's the flight plan. We'll see where we go. So, the value of mobility to the Pacific can be highlighted in 3 missions to me that I was honored to have touched. The first was our response to Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines in late 2013, as we rolled in with mobility into Tacloban and Manila and brought unique capabilities to the joint force there. The second mission I'll talk about, similar but a little bit different, is the earthquake in Nepal at the beginning of 2015. And then the last one I'll talk about is a mission I happened to be associated with that was a C-17 mission up to Wonsan, North Korea, where we retrieved 55 sets of U.S. human remains and brought them back. And I think they highlight all the things we've been talking about. So Philippines and Typhoon Yolanda, I'm the deputy 3 at PACAF, and the typhoon hits, and I am tasked to become the JACE, the air component coordination element, to the 3 MEF, who are stationed out of Okinawa, led by a Marine 3-star. and bring mobility to bear quickly into Tacloban. There's some AFOR responsibilities that come along with that. So think organize, train, and equip. Although it's not explicitly stated in the task, certainly as we move forward and join the JTF, there were things with the airmen under us that we needed to handle. So there was a unique blend of AFOR responsibilities too. The components that we used, certainly the C-17s here at HICM, plus the mobility C-17s that are out there, Elmendorf and Transcom supplied. We linked in with the CRG at Guam that provided enormous initial capability to get into Tacloban. We had liaison elements with the Transcom L&O here at Indo-Paycom. Certainly we liaised with the 613th and we're part of the 613th AOC as we move forward and brought those things in. So there was lots of coordination to be done. When I took off out of HICM with the team and we went to Guam and picked up the CRG, the follow-on elements of the CRG who were already in Tacloban, and then landed in Tacloban, Philippines, I got to tell you, when that ramp opened in the middle of the night, as we were about to offload K-loaders and forklifts and supplies and more personnel, I cannot describe to you the human calamity that I instantly saw. This was misery on a level that is almost indescribable. This was not uncomfortableness. This was not hunger. This was not, I haven't slept in a while. This was death, injury, destruction, desperation, and it's all on the ramp at the airfield. And what the mobility team did is brought instant hope to the inhabitants of Tacloban. What the mobility team has brought an instant plug into the JTF commander and his responsibilities. And what the mobility team brought, and I'll bring this up at the end, is a unique way of dealing with the thing. So the United States Mobility Enterprise took the night shift. We flew all our missions at night. When the other elements, I'll leave it politely, when others were choosing the days. The CRG lived on a ramp where they could not sleep, feet away from spinning props and running jet engines, downhill from facilities that the Filipinos were using as their relief stations, and did this for 30 days. And I still get choked up about it. The amount of professionalism and dedication that those mobility support airmen displayed over 30 days to get after that mission in the way they did it. And I'm telling you, when you see that desperation married with the professionalism that the mobility crowd offers, there's nothing that I can do that can meet that. And the task for the headquarters element that was hundreds of miles away in Manila is that we've got to match that professionalism downrange. We got to do everything. There's no sleep. There's no task too hard as we bring in the plugs to make it better. So food, supplies, water, capabilities in, hundreds floor loaded out on every sortie on C-17s, C-130s. I took a planning element from the C-130 squadron out of Yokota, and they helped come in and augment me. And we did exactly what General Van Ovos expects from us. We projected decisive strength, and we delivered hope, and it was a good plug-in. That's story number one. Story number two is a little bit different, but a lot of the same players. It's about a year and a half later. It's a earthquake in Nepal. And the geography is a little different, right? So it's the same players though, with some KC-135 added, with some Marine Corps lift added out of the KC-130s, out of Japan, the sumo crowd, but it's all the same team. It's my JACE team. It's my planning element from the 36th out of Yokota, and we actually recruited some Nepali speakers out of the Air Force, and I called them Team Gurkha, who went in with the CRG to Kathmandu, and the standard CRG awesomeness, armed with Nepali speakers that could bring order out of the chaos that was that airport right after the earthquake was absolutely amazing. We established our headquarters of the JACE in Utapao, Thailand, which many of you know has a permanent mobility en route structure, which was really good. So we had a runway, a warehouse. We had the awesome 222 Nation with some incredible professionals there. And of course, the lines of communication were a lot longer. So instead of from Manila to Tacloban, we're talking hundreds of miles, we're talking thousands of miles through Bangladesh, up through India, as we project power. The same things. Incredible challenges with the crew duty days, incredible challenges with high, hot, and heavy in Kathmandu, incredible challenges with a non-radar environment in high terrain. And I'll give you one example of the professionalism of the mobility, which doesn't need to be coached or even ordered out of a gray-haired person like me. You know, we used a 135 to go in initially with some cargo and some personnel because it's on alert for different reasons, but it sits Bravo at Kadena. We put them in. The crew goes into the sim and practices the approach into Kathmandu 5 times before they strap the jet on and go. Unbelievable dedication, absolutely essential to the safe operation. And that's just one small example, I think, of the uniqueness that the mobility enterprise brings, whether you fly, fix, or support to the operation. Let me highlight the last mission here, which is the North Korea mission. You know, after the Singapore summit with President Trump and KJU, it was announced that there was going to be a return of human remains. And once again, it was the mobility enterprise that instantly went into action to figure out how does a presidential statement turn into a good outcome. Again, a lot of the same players, the 613th, PACAF, Transcom, certainly the entire mobility enterprise, as we worked hard to plan that out with very obscure details and not a whole lot of known. C-17's cut to the pin with the extremely talented young lady aircraft commander who I believe is on the AMC staff now. And to watch her and her crew come in and hold court in a joint environment, in a fighter pilot environment, in an incredibly challenging political environment, was amazing to watch. You know, our job was to fly an hour up into Wonsan, spend 3 hours on the ground, collect 55 sets of human remains, pick up a fighter escort on the way out, and return it to Osan Air Base. You know, watching that go down, watching the planning, watching the confidence that the whole entire mobility enterprise brought was absolutely awe-inspiring. You know, to give you a little bit of the impact and describe what General Van Ovos calls delivering hope, 55 sets of human remains are going to yield over 250 individual identifications. To date, 69 U.S. servicemen, 77 ROC service persons, and over 70 en route to being identified right now. You know, just imagine the impact that has on brothers and sisters, sons and daughters to this day that'll receive a loved one from a year, you know, over 50 years ago, from a war over 50 years ago, and have the opportunity to say goodbye in a respectful, dignified way, because the entire enterprise reacted and executed. I've been a part of a lot of missions. I've never had the perfect one, but this one was as close to perfect as I've seen. At the end of the day, it was 20 seconds late on the planned arrival back with all the dynamics that we had to endure. And it's a tip of the hat to the entire enterprise that could pull that out. So let me bundle up those 3 missions real quick in the way I see it. You know, first of all, you know, when I left for the first 2 missions in PACAF and was ordered by Generals Carlisle and General Robinson to go out and do the mobility thing, General Carlisle said this, and this is pretty telling of what he expects of you all and me. He said, "Minnie, Make them feel like they own the whole Air Force as you go in there. Make them feel like they own the whole entire Air Force. Okay, in saying those words, he wrote me a blank check, and he said, Minihan, you write the number in the box. I will ensure it gets cashed on behalf of the Air Force. I think that shows, you know, a number of different levels. One, it shows the importance of the Air Force to the Joint Team, and two, it shows the incredible value of the mobility team to the Air Force. Incredibly inspired by those words. So here's the bundle on the so what on that. What the mobility enterprise brings is an amazing way to talk about how we're going to get it done, not if we're going to get it done. You bring incredible value on how you think, how you plan, and how you integrate. And then, of course, you bring amazing value on how you execute. And it all boils down to attitude. I think that in our DNA is an appreciation of the contributions of the collective, and that we understand that our success is ultimately determined by the success of the teams we support. We bring enormous value of the crew, the crew concept, and that, you know, one person can be awesome, but when we're functioning as a crew, we get better results, and we also are here's my adjective reuse again. We're awesomer. I'll say that. And then, you know, I just want to highlight, you know, that we understand that we only succeed if others succeed. And, you know, at the end of the day, there's a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, civilian counting on us to do our job every single day. And you may not know while we're launching a mission, doing a job, the exact ramifications downrange it's going to have, but they're incredibly valuable. Okay, that's session one. Let me transition to session two and talk about, you know, the way I see this playing out in the future here. I mean, it's not lost on me that Chief Brown coming out of PACAF Commander, that there's a lot of Pacific DNA in this document right here. And it is a wonderful document. It clearly explains the challenges, the way ahead, and what's needed out of not only just us as airmen, but us as a mobility enterprise. And I love this statement. Air dominance is not an American birthright. You know, so, you know, as I look out into this theater, as I look at the national defense strategy and look at the challenges, and in this theater, we own 4 out of the 5. When we talk about what we need to accelerate and what we need to change, you know, I know that this has ramifications, but I can see myself in this this document easily. My challenge to you all is that I'll talk about it in a bit, but we all find ourselves in this document. This is guiding. This is the touchstone. This is the basis for which will be defined on the challenges in the national defense strategy. So when we look at the mobility enterprise and we look at the long lines of communication that will be contested, when we look at the agility that's going to be needed to service a high-end warfight, when we look at the seam between strategic and tactical, especially when it comes for lift, we look at that whole supply chain from the mainland, from our first island chain, from the second island chain into Guam, and then forward. We're going to be incredibly challenged because of the near-peer adversary. It is going to drive a complete revamp on how we assess risk. It is going to drive a complete revamp on how we command and control, issue mission orders, and it is going to drive a complete revamp on what we think is joint. Joint, to me, General Kelly mentioned my joint time. Joint to me is not that I'm sitting next to a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. Okay, joint to me is that I know how soldier, sailor, airman, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen think. Joint to me means that I anticipate their needs before they have to transmit them to me. That's the level of jointness that we're going to have to get after. The synergy, and I'm talking true synergy here. I'm not talking deconflicted. I'm not talking slot time so we don't run into each other and altitude restrictions so we don't clip. I'm talking true synergy, that the efforts of the collective joint team have a bigger impact than they would individually, is where we're going to have to go. And there is no stronger stance in that, as articulated in this document, than the mobility enterprise. The logistics of a near-peer, true synergistic joint fight are going to be the difference between losing and winning out here in the Indo-Pacific. So, you know, when General Van Ovos throws out the projecting decisive strength, you know, that's really going to be at a new place and a new level when we talk about the Indo-Pacific. I'm sure there'll be questions on that. I'll open it up. We'll address those when we get to open up. All right, rounding third base here, and getting into this. You know, I'll be forthright here. I'm rolling this. This is new material for me, but something I've been thinking about a lot lately as I deal with some of the mentoring sessions that go on, and not deal when I enjoy the mentoring sessions going on here in my headquarters here. And I thought about my maturation, you know, as a mobility professional, you know, as it related to my first 3 squadrons. It's why I'm wearing the 61st patches today. But I could easily be wearing any patch from my journey. And I thought about it in the context of my time in the 61st at Little Rock, my time in the 52nd at Moody, and then my time in the 37th at Ramstein. I got these things. I joined the Green Hornets as they were coming back from Desert Storm and airdropping to the Kurds in northern Iraq and Turkey in '91. So they were extremely tight, extremely grizzled, had been gone a long way. And in that squadron also laid the senior majors, the lieutenant colonels, the chiefs, the seniors, the masters. They're at about their 20-year point from Vietnam. Okay, so we have the tail end of the Vietnam airlifters, and we've got a grizzled crew that came back. And I'm telling you, those guys were harsh on us. Your value in that squadron was solely based on your performance of your job. And for me specifically, my performance as a co-pilot in the cockpit, okay? And everything in that squadron was based on your value in the cockpit, your value to the mission. So if you weren't good at checklists, if you weren't good at radio calls, if you weren't good at chart building, if you weren't good at DZCO, and if you weren't good, then you were essentially you had a tough time in that squadron. I want to say it was harsh. I will say it was fair, and I will say it is perhaps the best foundational start I could have had to my career. And it drove a fire in us to not let the elders of that squadron down. They were harsh, but not unreasonable. They taught me the value of an honest feedback, where they could tell Minnie he sucked on that low level, but they could preserve the dignity of Lieutenant Minihan. And there are names you'll never know that will never be recorded that are tattooed in my brain and absolutely instrumental to being where I am today. Iracondo, Timmy Holmes, Grant Snicker, Greg Meyer, Ron Dinley, Tom Rittenauer, so many more that ingrained on me that sense of what it really means. And what it strikes me, and they're going to get about the first of my 3 buzzwords here, is it taught me the nobility, not mobility, the nobility of our calling of flying. And trust me, this is going to have, you know, this is true across the portfolio of fly, fix, support, no matter your role. I'll bring that around to the end. I don't want you to think I'm telling you a flying story. The nobility of what we do is what the 61st taught me. When I went to Moody in the 52nd, I learned from a lieutenant colonel named Mark Fritchie, who was, first of all, enormous. He's like 6'10", 300 football player. And what he taught me was the discipline of what we do. I grew up in the scheduling. I was a pilot scheduler to a central scheduler to a current operator barrel. and I could never get the order signed with him. It was never good enough. The crews weren't built good enough. The risk wasn't handled good enough. The consideration for the formation and the night and the conditions was never good enough. And I never once got a set of orders, any orders in 3 years through him on the first try. And what seemed frustrating to Captain Minihan, to now General Minihan, certainly conveys to me is that squadron and that leader, Mark Fritchie, taught me the discipline of what we do, okay? So I'm coming out of the nobility and I'm addressing the discipline of what we do. The appreciation for the risk, the appreciation for the crew build, the appreciation for the operational environment from which we're going to operate in, the appreciation of the deliberate development of and craftsmanship of in this case flying airlift, but in the broader context, developing the mobility enterprise. So that's the discipline piece. And then I had the good fortune to PCS to Ramstein and serve under Doug Krulin in the 37th Blue Tail Flies at Ramstein. And he taught me the command of what we do. And I got a PhD watching him for 2 years, command a squadron, for me to watch him value the contributions of the collective, how it all fits together, how we lead, how every process the squadrons do contributes to excellence, how an OPR is related to an upgrade, is related to a promotion, how you have to be good on both sides of your hat, that your professional job in the squadron needs to be matched by your performance in the cockpit, on the flight line, on the flight station, and how you connect that, how you motivate, how you discipline, how you maintain dignity. All those things, Doug Krulin, really hosted a clinic for 2 years on how that comes together. So what's in my mind is this transition from nobility to discipline and to command, and how that all comes together. And this isn't an officer thing, and this isn't a flying thing. This is about the enterprise, okay? I don't care whether you fly fixed support, and it doesn't matter to me how far you are, your proximity to the mission. This is applicable to no matter what we do. So I think, as I go back, I was extremely fortunate to have those squadrons and those people in my life, and I am absolutely grateful for it. If you go back now and tie back my opening 3 stories to nobility, discipline, and command, they absolutely fit in perfectly. The nobility of what we did on those 3 missions, okay, can't be taught overnight. That is a culture that exists within the mobility enterprise, that we are going to not sleep until we do our best to bring that decisive strength and that glimmer of hope in people that are suffering, or people that are longing for a loved one to return from a war, okay? The discipline that it takes to get after that, to operate at night with unknown conditions, to mitigate the risk, to get after it, the command, the supervision, all along the process that feeds to that outcome, that takes time to get it right, that fosters the right culture in squadrons and flights and shifts, incredibly valuable along the way. So, I guess to bend this up is to say, Simon Sinek's got the why. Certainly Chief Brown, Chief Bass show me the why in this document here. And then if you go back and evaluate your career, or as you go forward in yours now, and understand the nobility, the discipline, and the command or supervision that's needed, I think there's a collision of goodness there that'll be insightful. There certainly has been in my career. So to the team on the other side, I appreciate you listening to a standard mini rant. Thanks for that. I will say this, part of being on the joint team is great. And it's an honor to get up every morning here and suit up with a whole bunch of teammates. But I'll tell you, my heart does long to be on the flight line with the 2 T2s, pushing pallets, sweating it out, completely soaked through before sun comes up, you know, on the flight station, on the flight deck, on the flight line, you know, stupid early crew briefs. You know, the rare occasions I get to go down and feel that mobility team now, you got to know I come away energized. It's fuel for my soul each and every day. Although I'm a bit far away from it now, I'm cheering you on, everything you do. And I'm greatly appreciative to say that I'm a mobility warrior. So with that, sir, I'll turn it back to you and open it up to the questions. Thanks.
Sir, thanks so much for that passionate and you know, just your passion for mobility and what you do is just inspiring. And I'm hoping that really came across to our audience because it was absolutely fantastic. And I think it did because the questions have been absolutely lighting up. So we're going to go ahead and start here with the first question. So I'm going to throw the video back to you and see how we do with this one. They're not taking it easy on you, sir. I'll warn you right there. So first off, this is from Jamie Crowhurst. He says, thanks for speaking from your heart. So glad to see that hasn't changed. From your heart, do you think PACOM has the assigned forces to counter China's long-term strategic threat to our national security?
Jamie's a good friend of mine. Jamie, brother, good. Thanks for the question, and you're a big part of me too, and I value the journey we took together. Break. You know, so you look on the bumper sticker on assigned forces to Indo-Paycom, it's an extremely high number, right? It's 380,000. You know, there's West Coast forces, forces here in Hawaii, and then forces forward station. You know, part of what we look at is not just what we have, but where it's distributed. So, you know, when it comes to assure and deter, those forces are west of the international date line, which is not the majority of our forces of where they are. I'm not at all asking for a reassignment or forward stationing of forces you know, to redistribute them forward to the international date line, but this kind of gets at the mobility concepts of I think of where we're going. And there's you know, I read it in the Air Force Times. I believe it was also on Fox News or Washington Post as well. You know, when it talked about the lift needed, and you know, it's going to be more dispersed, more desolate, and less built up on what we're doing. So posture is what I'm getting after. Posture is not you know, bases, it's places. So that's what we're driving. So I think you know, of course, I've never been in a unit at any level that had enough people or enough money or enough forces. It's never happened. So I won't check the box that says I have enough. I will check the box that says, when we look at the distribution of forces, more so in crisis and conflict, we've got to make sure that there's places, not bases, that we can bring together the service concepts and the warfighting concepts. And of course, when you cue off of dispersed, desolate, less built up, what you're doing is you're giving a homework assignment to the mobility team to figure it out. And I'll hit that in my closing remarks too. But I think I answered your question, Jamie. If you got a reattack, go ahead, brother.
He doesn't have a re-attack. He actually had a pre-attack, but he wanted to know if you could enlighten us on the finer points of speeder springs and flyweights. A little bit of jab at your propeller propulsion there, sir.
Hey, man, the governor housing in the C-130 is the 8th wonder of the world. That's all I got to say. Beta shafts, alpha shafts, flyweights, and speeder springs, magnets. That piece of gear, which is the size a little bit bigger than a football, is the 8th wonder of the world. And the T-56 engine is right behind it.
All right. Before we get to another question, Stan Lowry wants to just make a comment that your role in the repatriation was nothing short of heroic. Sir, you're an epic leader, and the USAF is blessed to have you leading our airmen.
Mongo, you're too kind, brother. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll get back into the hard questions, sir. Multi-capable, multifunctional, hybrid airmen. Lots of terms out there now. But bottom line, how do we best OT&E airmen for your COCOM?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, so this is one of those things where you can get consumed with what the perfect answer would be, and sacrifice good enough for the, good enough for the sake of perfect, and never really get anywhere. It's a big part of my life, is when you think about, what's laid out in the Accelerate, Change, or Lose, and you think about all the things needed to handle that. We don't need to be perfect from the get-go. We need to be better than we were yesterday. And a multifunctional air. But let me tell you, by nature, a product of the mutiny of '47 is that airmen bring that, right? That they automatically bring that to the fight. That doesn't come at the expense of any other service, but it's what I expect of an airman. It's what I specifically expect of a mobility airman. That they are broader than what their AFSC is, okay? That they're going to bring solutions beyond their expertise and have a meaningful contribution. And I would expect that same thing to continue. Do I need a 2T2 that can hang bombs on an F-35, a Marine F-35? We could all agree that would be awesome. But let's start with he or she can refuel a C-130, a C-17, and also an F-35. Multi bueno. And let's start working up from there. So there is going to be a need for some cross-functional. Let's not get bogged down in perfect, and let's just get to better. And I think we'll have enormous impact. My challenge to the other services would be the same. They have their versions of everything that we have, and they're amazing folks too. And with the combination of that with the energy of the new generation, I'll give you an example, and I'll tie this back to the 61st. I was in the 61st when the Red Devils across the way got H3s. So on one side of the street, we're flying 62 and 63 model E models. On the other side of the street, we're flying 92 H3s. And at the time, you could not cross the streams. The H3 guys would say, you cannot imagine how complicated this H3 is, you silly E model person. You can't touch it. Fast forward, I go back to Little Rock as the wing commander. Everybody in the 19th could fly the E, the H1, and the H3 based on whatever jet made it supplied that day. And they could be flexible throughout the qualifications. The same thing is true through the whole portfolio of expertise that the mobility airmen bring. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Next one's real passionate to me, especially as a KC-10, KC-135 guy myself, but this one's anonymous, unfortunately. I swear it wasn't me, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are tankers to PACOM plans?
maybe my tanker friend upstairs probably submitted that. I can't understate it. How can I guess I can't state it strong enough, the meaning, the meaningfulness of the refueling fight's going to be not only for competition and crisis, but it's hard to imagine the amount of booms, the amount of pounds that we're going to have to rely on in a conflict. The Strat Bridge, the ability for long-range precision strike to come from the mainland, for us to be able to maneuver in mass, is going to be on the backbones of the tanker fleet. And it's not just the Air Force kinetic answers. It's going to be the joint team. Whether you're flying off a boat, flying off a jungle strip, or flying off of an airbase, it's going to be incredibly important. It's incredibly important now. I think that I told you I'm on my second lap around here. The things that kick my butt the most are tanker related. I will also say it's impressive to watch what happens every day around here. When you look at the Bomber Task Force and the enormous success, looking at that dynamic force employment that they've been doing for the last 3 months, it might be a casual observation to some that there's bombers flying all over the globe. It's not lost on me that there is a backbone of tanking underneath that of which the success or not relies on. So. As the 46 comes online, as we look at the posture forward on operating in bases, the first thing we're going to go do is figure out the tanker piece. And for the record, I just read Tanker Pilot. It was a really good book. I saw it on a thread and read it. I thought it was good. The issues that he dealt with in Desert Storm are going to be that times 100 for what happens out here. Over.
Copy that, sir, and I couldn't agree more. So now we're going to go a little bit harder on you. Chris Holland asks, how accurate do you think Christian Bros is in kill chain from your perspective? I.e., are we heading towards a theater where China will be able to deny us access and we must change the way we fight and what we fight with?
Yeah, good. I am about 3/4 of the way through kill chain. In fact, I'm lazy now. I don't read books. I listen to books. But it's amazing how much you can get done just with a 15-minute ride to work. So I'm about 3/4 through it. I can't argue with anything that he puts out. I don't want to paint the adversary. I'll just leave it at. I'm going to try not to use specific terms, but I'm not going to paint the adversary as 10 feet tall. But as described by General Brown and Accelerate, Change, or Lose, he's spot on. And I think kill chain is a great example of that. As you lay out the challenges of A2AD, as you lay out the challenges of contested lines of communication, as you lay out the challenges of trying to have positional advantage, it's exactly what General Brown's getting after. And we're going to have to really think, and it's not a birthright of what we're going to do. To go back to my 3 things, it's going to completely redo the way we look C2, the way we assess risk, and certainly the way we think of joint. I've found kill chain an enjoyable read, especially the first half of it, and I think that the conclusions are fairly accurate. Over. Thanks, Chris.
All right, the next one kind of follows on that. We've got Paul Taggart asking you from an accessions standpoint. USAFA, ROTC, OTS, tech training, how do we best prepare inbound airmen to effectively operate in the Indo-Paycom AOR?
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Paul, it's a great question. So it's funny, I don't, I've never distinguished between your source of commissioning, at any level, at any level of my career. And I think they all do a wonderful job, providing, exactly what we'd expect out of what this nation deserves to lead its blood and treasure, right? Incredibly gifted leaders. As we transition to, this near peer, and you read the NDS, you read Chief Brown's document here, I think we're going to go back to basics a little bit. I don't need you to speak Chinese, but I need you to understand the Chinese thought process when it comes to fighting. Some of that goes back to Sun Tzu, clearly, but there is an enormous library of documents and thought pieces, and kill chain being one of them, that gets after that if they're our adversary, what they're going to do. And it's got to click in our head, the standard template of give us 6 months to build up a force and we'll meet you on the block and kick your butt ain't gonna work. That's exactly what Chief Brown's getting after. So, that whole, it's valid. The Sun Tzu, not force on force way of thinking. When you are strong, make them think you are weak. Where you are weak, make them think you are strong. All is going to have an enormous play here. So what I demand out of the people that come out of Indo-Paycom is that they understand deterrence theory and how we can, and not just the O-plan theory, right? O-plan theory is denial by punishment. I'm going to fight you, but that we adopt a more sophisticated lens and understand deterrence, its relationship to the challenges with near peer adversary. That you're going to have an appreciation of the joint team here. Joint doesn't mean, I'm going to emphasize this, joint does not mean that I have served or carried another service's blood in the back of my airplane, okay? Joint means I think like them and I anticipate their needs before they have to transmit them. So the people going to do that, I'll make one more point. When you read the bottom of an OPR or an EPR and it says challenge with joint, this team here delivers that. When you bring the complexities of the interagency, when you bring the complexities of the NDS, when you bring all the challenges of everything described in this document, that's what joint on this staff means. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist in others, But I'll tell you what, if there's a supervisor out there saying this person's up to the challenge, then there's a hiring authority here that wants you on my team.
I think my colleagues in the strategy and policy department up here at the Naval War College must have paid you to get those Sun Tzu quotes in there. So definitely hit on a lot of what we teach up here curriculum wise. So we're going to get into a little bit different question here. Al Moore is asking what came out of the JADC2 ABMS activity in the AOR in the past month that you could at least talk about.
Yeah, hey, so I'll hit it softly here, and I'll just tell you, kind of a conclusion from a combatant commander perspective. First of all, as it relates to JADC2, and certainly that evolution was extremely successful. So the value of it can't be overstated, right? That's exactly the things that we're doing to get after this. But I want to be clear from a joint perspective is that I'm not interested in the Air Force's answer to that C2 or those long-range precision fires, that integration. If it doesn't have the joint team integrated and encompassing their versions of the exact same thing. The Army was in Yuma 2 weeks ago doing the exact same thing with different platforms. And what I'm screaming here from the combatant commander level is those got to be mushed together. Okay. So, this isn't an alarmist statement because one, I believe it's being done. And two, I know people are smarter than me. But when you take the inaugural steps on some of these high level things, there's got to be some independence as you develop them. But we got to be really demanding on bringing those together and getting after, that tight, automated, no info sharing barrier kill chain that needs to happen to get after the near peer advocacy. So I'm a big fan of all the projects that the services are doing, and I'm really looking forward to how the JADC2 effort brings it all together. So we've got this gets back to my comment on the true synergy of the joint team, right? Got to be a level that we could barely conceive right now to make it one that's going to actually win for us. Over.
Thanks, sir. We're got a couple more questions in here. We're going to try to squeeze in. So the first one is from Chris Koulis and wants to know how our COVID response in the U.S. influences our relations with our Indo-Paycom partners, and are we able to leverage the pandemic response to counter Chinese influence in the region?
Thanks, Chris. That's a good question. So, of course, it's related. I put that in the competition bin. Incredibly challenging out here with the COVID response, especially early, as the models were, the models, some models were in conflict with each other. You're dealing with host nation models, specifically Japan, Korea. There's parts of, enormous parts of America out here, American Samoa, CNMI, Guam, DISCO responsibilities here on the, as I just described, plus Hawaii. Host nation, think Korea and Japan as we tried to bring all that together. Some nations incredibly durable, high-end medical capabilities, ability to manufacture PPE, all that stuff. So I thought that, COVID was right up there in complexity and our ability. And I thought the Indo-Paycom team did a really good job, in the early stages. We executed Cobra Gold in Thailand with 5,000 soldiers in March, which was extremely early. And we walked through all the risk. We walked through all the modeling. We walked through all the host nation, interaction and coordination that needed to happen, and we had a successful outcome. So as nations look to what's happening on the mainland, I call it the mainland, forgive me, the mainland right now, there is concerns. They have their own ROM and quarantine ROE, but I will say this, as always, the relationship mill to mill amongst all of our partners and allies is very strong, and we're able to work out the challenges and have successful outcomes. Korea's a great example. Japan's another great example. The DISCA that we've done in Guam, CNMI, American Samoa, here in Hawaii, are all good examples. But we understand that this is we're probably not even halfway through here, and there's going to be other challenges that arise. Thanks for the question.
All right, sir. Got time for a couple more here. Who are your most common interagency partners in the Indo-Paycom theater?
Yeah, good question. So we've got an FPA, foreign policy advisor, with an ambassador, sits on the same deck as I do. So I would say the majority of my time when I'm on the horn working things, I'm dealing with OSD and OSD policy. I'm dealing with the policy folks in the SecDef thing. When I'm dealing with the joint staff, I'm mostly with the 5. And when I'm interagency, I deal a lot with state, which includes not only the FPA as I described, but also the country teams. We've got essentially a JIASIG on the staff in our J9. We enjoy a robust investment of the interagency on the staff here, finance, state, USAID, Homeland Security, a dozen. And then we also have a JIADF West, which is more counter-narcotic oriented, but also has enormous bang for the buck for unregulated fishing, maritime domain awareness, environmental security, so much more. So I feel like the joint interagency is well represented here in the staff, but I think I answered your question. Go ahead.
I think you did, sir, as well. Got one more question here from a gentleman named Bill. Can you comment briefly on the Korean missile launch pause?
I'm enjoying it, would be one. Having served in PACAF, Korea, or PACOM since 2013, I'm aware of, trust me, I'm intimately aware of the North Korean provocations. As Mongo brought out, I was pretty close to some of the discussions and some of the actions, both U.S. and ROC and North Korean, frankly, that that have contributed or at least been a part of the pause here. Our challenge here, it's not a challenge. Our mission here is to make sure that pause or no pause, that we're ready, right? That requires an intimate relationship with NORTHCOM. It requires an intimate relationship with partners and allies. Specifically, I'll bring out the ROC in Japan when it comes to ballistic missile defense and all the pieces and parts of the architecture that come that, which are not only combined but also joint. Aegis BMD destroyer, Army THAAD, the 613th, and the ADSI roll down the hill. Just an enormous amount of effort. And then should we get back to provocation, the challenge to the team, we were talking about this, is to not act like it's been since 2 years since we've had one. It should be muscle memory for us, regardless of how long it's been on the provocation. So I can assure you that the muscle memory is there. I hope that, we're coming up on the 10th of October for the big North Korean parade. I hope provocation continues to be off the table and that the diplomatic opportunities still remain open, but we get paid to not get caught flat-footed. Over to you.
All right, sir, that concludes the time we have for questions. So I'll give it to you to your closing remarks before I send it back to General Kelly.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add on that I didn't get to maybe didn't hit hard enough in the opening salvo is, hey, find yourself in the way forward in General Brown's document here. If you're expecting a no hair or a gray hair person to tell you the answer, that ain't going to happen. Certainly we're a part of driving the solutions and the answers in the way ahead, but the best innovation comes from the expert level, and that means it comes from you. And I'll get back. It comes from all those who fly, fix, support. It comes from officer and enlisted alike. And it doesn't matter to me if you're a lifter, a refueler, airlift support, or air medical evac. You all are going to drive the solutions to this, and the challenge to the gray hair, no hair crowd is going to be, let those innovations bubble up. I don't want them suffocated at a low level. I want to hear them because that lose part at the bottom scares me. I want to change those last two words to "and when," and that's only going to happen if you all provide that awesome expertise and innovation to move us forward. Thanks.
General Kelly.
General Minihan. Sir, there aren't enough words to say thank you, and I mean that sincerely. As a fellow Irishman, my mother told me that the biggest problem we all have is our kidneys are just way too close to our eyes. So I have publicly shed a tear or two myself, as you well know. You've probably seen it, and don't ever lose that quality. But it's one that we're just born with because our kidneys are just way too close to our eyes. Here's how I would summarize what you just told us, Minnie, if you'll allow me. If you take the tenets of nobility, discipline, and command, and you form the proper team, we can do anything we are asked to do, and we will do them, and we will do them to the ultimate best. And then finally, like you, I was a very, very lucky airman who many mornings woke up and said, "What the hell am I doing this job for?" And who, and tried to stay humble. But one of the things that I learned about nobility, discipline, command, and teamwork was that enthusiasm was indeed a force multiplier. And sir, your enthusiasm is the force multiplier we're all looking for to help us as we face the humongous challenges that we face. So again, thanks so much. And I will never forget nobility, discipline, and command from your presentation today. Thanks again, Mike.
Cheers all. Thanks, sir.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And General Minihan, you had some great points there. That really is a good segue into me finishing here when you were talking about Chief Brown's remarks as well as Simon Sinek. I'd like to talk a little bit about the upcoming Airlift Tanker Association convention. It will be virtual this year. Registration is live now at atalink.org, and it's going to be the 27th through the 29th. And we will have the Chief of Staff of the Air Force speaking as well as Simon Sinek. So should be some great opportunities there. When you go online, you'll be able to click on begin registration, and we are happy to announce that active duty military or government civilian employees are free. So please make sure you go to atalink.org and start signing up so that you can enjoy this. The views expressed in this presentation have been those of the speaker and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Air Force, the Department of Defense, the United States government, or the Airlift Tanker Association. Please send your comments and suggestions for future topics and guests to us at admin@airlifttanker.onmicrosoft.com. Again, thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the online virtual convention.